We now have Will Manso joining Foxboro Rush. He's a sports director at WPLG down in Miami. Thursday night football, great week 2 matchup, 2 explosive offenses with the Dolphins hosting the Bills. Will, when you look into this matchup, what's a part that you are focusing on, especially with the Dolphins team that came off a thrilling comeback at home last week against the Jaguars?
Yeah. You know, normally with a matchup, you look at the team itself, right? What they're doing, what they like to do. And the Dolphins obviously are led by their offense and Tua and Mike McDaniel's system and the weapons they have, Tyreek Hill. But I think in this particular matchup, guys, it always starts with Josh Allen and how are the Dolphins finally going to figure out a way to slow him down. Even when Josh Allen was a rookie early on, when he was struggling in his career trying to find himself, he had success against Miami. They've won 11-12 against the Dolphins. Allen has only lost to him one time after that rookie season. Tua has had all kinds of struggles against them. They had the chance last year to win a division. They didn't. So I actually focus more on how can this defense find a way to slow down Josh Allen and allow the offense to make some plays and find a way to finally beat the Bills.
So what do you think the best way is, right? What if you were calling the plays, if you were implementing the thing, like what would you do?
And that's the hard thing, right? Because you talk to those guys all the time. And Mike McDaniel talked about on Monday. I asked him specifically about that, and he said, look, it's different personnel. It's not like it's been all the same guys in the last 4 or 5 years, not just coaching, but on the field. So the question now becomes, you're right, how do you do it? Look, Josh Allen's one of the best players in the NFL for a reason. He's an MVP candidate for a reason. He's a superstar for a reason. But I think trying to find a way to keep him in the pocket. I know every coach says that. I know every analyst says that. Trying to find a way to keep him in the pocket, not running loose, because he had so much success against Miami with his legs. We saw it in week 1 in their comeback against Arizona as well, him using his legs. It's easier said than done, but they have to find some sort of way to start to do it because it hasn't worked the last 5-6 years.
It's important you jump out of like the containment. We saw Jalen Phillips with a couple big plays against the Jaguars. It's good to see him healthy and on the field. But then we also see Jalen Ramsey like getting burned on the outside by Brian Thomas Jr., who's a great receiver, but Jalen Ramsey is supposed to be one of the top corners. I mentioned that to ask Will, like, how healthy is this Dolphins defense right now, especially leading into such a pivotal week? It's just week 2, but these are the last 2 teams to have won the AFC East, so we know how big every matchup between them is.
Yeah, and I think, too, the question of health, certainly with the Dolphins, becomes more toward the offense. Let's talk about the defense first. Jalen Ramsey working his way back. He had that hamstring injury / contract dispute going on in camp, and it miraculously healed, and he played in week 1. Jalen's still at a high level. He did get burned, but he also made a big play on a 4th and 1 where he crossed the field, made a big tackle. I think with Jalen, you know what you get there. I think, Kendall Fuller, I think with their guys, they feel comfortable with Jalen Phillips, who looked phenomenal, 10 months removed from Achilles surgery to look the way he did. They're still missing Bradley Chubb. He's on the way back. I think, guys, it turns to offense. They're missing 2 big pieces potentially. They won't have Raheem Mostert. Mike McDaniel announced that this morning. And Devon Achane, who was phenomenal and electric as a rookie and scored a touchdown in week 1, is probably going to be a game-time decision. So you're looking at rookie Jaylen Wright, one of their high draft picks, is potentially having to get a lot of play. Though that's concerning when you know that Buffalo is going to focus on trying to find ways to slow down Tyreek and Jalen Waddle.
I think one of the things that the Dolphins are so good at is creating explosive plays, right? And I think we saw that with Tyreek on the outside. The one problem with explosive plays is when you are facing a premier quarterback, the whole point is limit his time on the field. Let's limit his possessions, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times, defensively, we're in with our coordinators. It's like, okay, this is our game plan when we're playing one of these top guys is we need to keep him on the sideline. I mean, the best way to stop these elite quarterbacks is not let them throw the ball or create. Yeah. I think who do the Dolphins go to create rhythm type football where they can have sustained drives and not have to rely on, Tyreek Hill hitting an 80-yard touchdown pass?
Yeah. It's a good point, Mark, and it's a reason why they struggled, I think, in week 1 in the first half. Tua chewed them out at halftime. The way they were playing, the way they were blocking, the way they were running routes. I mean, they were not happy with their offense. Part of it is they didn't have any success running the football in week 1. I mentioned Achane. He had success catching the ball out of the backfield, but they didn't run the ball well in week 1. I don't see a formula, unless it's just all explosive plays, and they have one of those nights where they can't run the football and win a game like this. Like, they have to be able to at least sustain, as you mentioned, sustain drives, run the ball, have those opportunities. Achane would be the perfect guy, but again, he's a game-time decision. Now, I will say it seems like he's trending more toward playing. Mostert's out, So how much Achane can kind of carry the load along with a rookie? I mentioned Jaylen Wright. What you have there didn't play in week one. It's a big question. But their offensive line actually held up okay in week one. It's going to be a little different this time around, but it held up okay in week one. And obviously, if they give Tua time in McDaniel's system, he finds those guys. At some point, one of those big plays does happen.
Yeah, it's important in week one, them holding up Josh Allen, Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, Eric Armstead. That was a really good defensive line that they were facing. And you did point out Jaylen Wright didn't play week one. I mean, when I saw him being inactive, I said, oh, okay, that was a rookie with a lot of hype. I guess you don't like what they see from him now. But from what you've seen over the summer, Will, and what you've heard about Jaylen Wright and Cam talking to the players, is that a guy that they can depend on, especially if they need him this Thursday, which it sounds like?
Man, he gave the same vibes, and I know camp is different. I understand. You see guys in camp. There's always these camp guys, and then they don't. You see them in season, they're not quite there when they're playing top talent, first team talent. But he looked phenomenal in camp throughout the summer. He was there. He was working hard. He was getting stronger. Every player to a man, the veterans that saw him said, "Man, this kid can fly. This kid can move." Similar things they were saying to Devon Achane last year, and Achane ended up backing it up with his play on the field. He was great as a rookie and made some electric plays. I think they foresee a situation where Wright can be that way. Maybe not as powerful. Achane showed a lot more power in between the tackles than I thought many expected for a speedster. But again, the playmaking ability, a lot of Mike McDaniel's offense is when you get in space, go. That's why people joke that the Dolphins are like a track team. When they get in space, they go. Wright has the potential to be that kind of 1-2 punch now with Mostert out with Achane.
When you have an elite quarterback like Josh Allen, you're always wondering, okay, who are we going to throw the ball to? They go out and get Keon Coleman in the draft, and obviously Mac Hollins. What did you see from kind of the wide receivers and the support staff around Josh Allen that could indicate, hey, man, this could be a real threat team going in late into January into the playoffs?
Yeah, it's funny too, Marcus. I thought the same thing. I looked at their roster. Like, you cover a team like I cover the Dolphins and others, and vice versa. Bills media and fans looking at the Dolphins, and the one thing I said was, okay, so who is he going to throw to? I mean, these guys are all NFL receivers, but there isn't like a number one. And then at the end of the day, you look and he spread the ball around, and guys made plays, and you still got a veteran like Curtis Samuel who's there as well. I mean, they have guys that are capable and potentially even more than just capable. They can make big plays. And he's so special that it goes back to the containment. When he starts running around and having time to find guys, he's just so dangerous, and having that weapon it makes everybody better, right? And that's the question. I do think this is going to be an early season test for them. How capable are those receivers? Where you got Jalen Ramsey potentially locking down one side of the field and Kendall Fuller the other. The Dolphins really like their third quarter and Kader Kohu. What do you have there from a receiver that can make a play in a big game like this? I think we're going to find out all about what that receiving core is all about now.
It'll be a big test. And even looking back on the Dolphins receiving core, we can't talk about the Dolphins without looking back to Sunday and what Tyreek Hill went through before the game. Yeah. People that have seen it, he was pulled over. It was careless driving and, put his window up, cops overreact, yanked him out of the car. And then he went out and scored an 80-yard touchdown. But we saw Calais Campbell, Jonnu Smith, being involved in it, and not in a negative way, but being put in handcuffs and all that. But where does this stand right now? How is Tyreek Hill and how is this team overall, this locker room, as they try to move past something that was so traumatizing to happen to one of their guys?
I'll tell you this, guys. I've been covering this team 26 years, and it's always drama around the Dolphins. There's always something. This team from the early days, there's always something going on. In this case, it took a more serious tone because it involved, obviously, what happened to Tyreek, and then two teammates come to his defense, and one of them gets cuffed to Calais Campbell. This week out of camp, being there Monday, being there Tuesday, Tyreek spoke today as well. There's been a lot of emotion, and it's hard in a short week. When you play Sunday, you can sort of compartmentalize and move on slowly. I mean, they got a game tomorrow, and all of it has been around that. Guys have backed each other. Mike McDaniel's talked about how proud he is of guys sticking up for each other. Tua talked yesterday about, look, this is a serious topic. We want to continue to attack it, talk to local police, law enforcement, find ways to bridge the gap and bring good out of this. But they've all said the same thing. We got a football game. So it's hard. I defer to a guy like Mark who played and others who played. When you're in the locker room, you got a game, and then you got outside stuff. You can call it distractions. You can call it life issues. It's very hard. I mean, these guys are human. But they've said all the right things. They seem focused. And I guess the fact that they're playing a team that they haven't beat much the last few years probably helps them refocus better because they know the narrative. Tua said it yesterday. Look, man, we know the narrative that we can't beat the Bills. And until we start beating them, that narrative's not going to go away.
Yeah, Mark, how
Yeah,
do you do that?
Go ahead.
No, say, Mark, how do
Go
you
ahead.
do that?
Yeah, I mean, so like, here's the thing, right? So when you're in the locker room, certain guys just have more things that are off the field that are distractions, right? Or just not distractions, but endorsement opportunities. Like there's certain guys that have a different life than the rest of the 70% of the guys in the locker room. That's just so. I think I would be interesting. Like, how big was it for the Miami fan base, for even the players in the locker room and the coach, that they got to see the body cam footage? They got to see what actually happened. Because, I mean, to be completely honest, when you first see it, right? The headline: Tyreek Hill gets arrested for speeding outside the stadium. I got to admit, my first thing was, man, again, like he's getting in trouble again.
Yeah.
And like there has to be some sort of that in that Miami Dolphins fan. But like, this is our best player. Like, you got to stop getting in trouble. Like, what is it saying? Liar, liar. Like, stop breaking the law. But then when you see the body cam footage, you realize that no matter what happened before that, whether he was going 100 miles an hour, whether he was going 20 miles an hour, everything before that almost doesn't matter as much, because it was handled so egregiously by the police. And a few years back with the George Floyd incident and all that, like, I think America really saw that, hey, look, this doesn't have to be an underprivileged person that this happens to. This could be the guy who we watch every Sunday, like that. Like, everybody asks, how could these police officers not know who that is? Right? Like, or maybe they did and didn't care. I think having that body cam footage and actually seeing what happened, how did that maybe change the narrative in Miami?
Oh, it did. And I look, to your point, Mark, and it's the truth. Look, Tyreek has had issues with the law before and has had issues in his personal life before. But this goes beyond that, because you hear it, you say, okay, what happened with Tyreek now? Then you watch the video like, oh, this is not about Tyreek. And to your point, there was a reference in the body cam video where the officer said under his breath, oh, that's Tyreek Hill. That's Tyreek. Like, they knew very early it was him. So the way it escalated, the way it happened, it was just unnecessary. And I think to see Tyreek go through that, again, it does point out that it could happen to a superstar. It could happen to a guy walking down the street. And the Dolphins are very much aware of that. Now, I will say this. I don't know where he gets – I guess he's just so talented. But to go out then to go out, and I think it was Teron Armstead who said that Tyreek walked in the locker room with this anger of what he just went through. And how can he not be? You get cuffed, you get thrown on the ground. There's a rage in you when you're finally free that, like, holy cow, that we haven't experienced. I've never experienced. I can only imagine. And then he goes out and he gets 100 yards and a touchdown and helps his team win the game. It's nuts. I don't even know how he does it. But the players feel like it's not going to be a distraction, an issue within. If anything, it's going to bond them to move forward to try to do things together outside of the football field. And that's been the message all week. And honestly, guys, win or lose tomorrow, I really don't think that what happened outside will impact anything that happens on the field tomorrow night.